We also get to hear from one of the most quoted men in economics. Dr. Ray Perryman is here today, and I think we're very fortunate to have him here, given the nature of our economy and the timing of certain things going on. It's going to be a timely message. So we're excited to have Dr. Perryman here as well. And then for our invocation today, we have Randy McCauley, the CEO and president of Providence, Texas. He's also an NLF board member, and he's on this banquet committee. So please welcome Randy McCauley.
Well, I don't have an April Fool's thing, but don't stand by a speaker when Randy Clinton is ordering you to the table. If you will bow and pray with me. O great and glorious Lord, we come to you today with open hearts in celebration of the blessings you have bestowed on us. We celebrate the heartfelt contributions of these people in our communities and towards those in need within them. While it seems we live in a chaotic time, pandemics, aggressions, hostilities, economic woes, we are thankful for our circumstance with you as our guide and great defender. Please give us the comfort and resolve to remember our charge to help others. Give us strength as we live our daily lives. Remind us to be kind to others at all times, and measure our days by the positive words and actions towards those around us. Give us selfless motivation to lift each other up through your glory and constant presence. While some days may be cloudy and dark, we know your incredible light will brighten them. Your love will illuminate the horizon and bring us eternal warmth. We pray for the people suffering in the world, in Ukraine, in America, and our own communities. Help us be an anchor in the storm for others with your constant companionship. Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Please fill our hearts with love all the days of our lives. Let us offer each other peace throughout our days. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Randy. And for the pledges of allegiance, let's welcome Westlake Mayor Laura Weed.
Thank you. Please join me in the pledge to our country.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And to our state.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mayor Weed. So we're going to try to run a tight ship and get this thing going, and so that we can end by 4 o'clock. That's the best I can come up with. So, no, in all seriousness, to respect your time, if you would please go ahead and start eating. The main entree will be served here shortly, so please enjoy your salad as we go through the program. There are several people that I'd like to thank that are here today. I'd first like to thank each of our sponsors who you see on the screen and on the signs leading into the venue. While everyone here is supporting NLF and our scholarship program through participation, please allow me to mention our sponsors who have gone above and beyond. Our lunch sponsor today is Marriott Dallas Fort Worth Westlake. Our recognition sponsor, who's allowed us to honor 7 school districts here today, is EECU. Today's VIP sponsors are Sierra Bank, First Financial Bank, Fletcher Consulting Public Relations, Hillwood Apparel Company, Line Barber, Providence Bank of Texas, Republic Services, and Texas Health Resources, HEB. So if we could give all of those sponsors a nice round of applause. Please notice the scrolling names on of our table sponsors as well. Thank you to all of our sponsors, because some of the proceeds today will help fund our scholarship program through the Northeast Leadership Forum Foundation, which we'll discuss in greater detail later. If I could, I would like to ask the Northeast Leadership Forum Board of Directors to stand. We want to thank you for all of your hard work year-round to make this organization what it is. Also wanted to thank our planning committee for today's event. The chairman of that committee is Randy Clinton. Please stand. Rebecca Hissel, please stand. Randy McCauley, please stand. And last but certainly not least, John Fletcher. They've done a lot of hard work and put together a lot of good things for us to have today, so thank you. I'd also like to, again, recognize Randy Clinton for all of your efforts in securing the venue today and all of your hard work in chairing this committee. I also want to thank those of you in the room, and you know who you are, who have helped start a new technical education scholarship program that runs concurrent with our normal scholarship program. It provides an education for students who focus on trade education, and last year we were able to raise right at $20,000 to distribute in the form of scholarships to those students seeking trade education. So we thank you. You know who you are. Normally, we're at the point in the program where I would invite last year's chair up to say a few words and to also receive his chairman plaque. Unfortunately, our past chairman is not able to be with us today. Howard Shotwell was unable to attend today, but he has agreed to produce a short video that will show on the screens here shortly. And for those of you that know Howard, he is salt of the earth. He is a great mentor to most everybody in our organization, and he is truly committed to the cause and actually spearheaded the initiative to give out trade scholarships and really was the main person behind that effort. So we're going to take a few minutes and watch a video. Howard did want to share his gratitude, and so if we could play that video right now.
Hi everyone. I'm so pleased to see that you are all here today. This is the largest event I believe that we've had for this particular award ever. And I am sincerely apologetic that I cannot be there today. We had a great year last year. Our NLF added 25 new members. We had the largest attendance for the Heart of North Texas meeting in November. We made the application process a little bit easier and user-friendly for new applicants. And most importantly, I was able to start a new initiative for scholarships last year, in addition to our standard scholarships. These scholarships are for skills training for those students that do not desire to go and get a four-year degree. I have been honored to be your chairman last year. It is a great organization, and I am honored to turn the chairmanship over to Shelby Broom this year. Thank you so much, and God bless.
may have heard Howard reference a few numbers, but he did. We had our best membership effort in 2021 under his guidance. He established the Trade Scholarship Fund. Hartmore, Texas was the most successful one we've had to date. And so his impact has really put this organization in a place to where we can build on that momentum. And we're all fortunate to be a part of that. So we appreciate Howard. We have a great number of elected officials here today. If you're an elected official, would you please stand so we can show our appreciation to your service in Northeast Tarrant County, please? Many in the room today are first-time attendees. In case you don't know, Northeast Leadership. In case you don't know what Northeast Leadership Forum does, here's a short version. The NLF enhances and promotes the economic vitality and the quality of life in Northeast Tarrant County by providing leadership, forums, just like today, and information exchanges. NLF acts as a catalyst for communication, collaboration, and cooperation. In simple terms, we are the movers and shakers in the 16 towns and communities represented here today. You'll see membership applications on your table. If you're not an NLF member and you'd like to be, please fill that out and hand it to any one of the board members that stood. If you are a member, please take a form with you and consider a colleague or friend who might benefit from this membership. Now I'd like to take a little bit of time and tell you about our scholarship program through the NLF Foundation. It's one of the great things we do at the Northeast Leadership Forum is to provide scholarships for graduating area school seniors through the NLF Foundation. Perryman has served as the chairman of this foundation for several years, and I would like to bring her up as she's got some comments and some recognition she would like to share.
Good afternoon. We're delighted that you're here. Our scholarships that we have given for the last several years have grown. And what is so special about this is the fact that we now do not only for, as you have heard, not only for colleges, but for vocational schools. And what I would like to do right now is to let one of our students tell you how special this scholarship has been for him that he received last year. This is Solomon Arvello. Is that right, Tito? That's it. Thank you. Tito was helped us get him to speak, but he is a student, and he received a scholarship last year. We just wanted to share with you how special this has been for him.
I want to thank the Northeast Leadership Forum for awarding the Trade School Scholarship in 2021. This scholarship has helped me get through culinary school and advance in my culinary career as a chef. I appreciate each and every one of you that are a brothers chamber and those that help the scholarship take place. Thank you.
We have been able to do these scholarships the last couple of years because of a partnership that was created with the Ham Foundation, and Charlie Powell and Jean Ann Ham are here today. And the nice thing that they have provided us is that they have matched each year for the last 3 years so that we could give more scholarships to our students. And they have given us $22,000 to the foundation so that we are able to give out many scholarships. At this time, I would like to turn it over to them.
Thank you, Carol. We'll make this short. I had the pleasure about 3 years ago of introducing this group to the Alan and Nancy Ham Foundation. I think many of them in this room know that Alan was a very prominent businessman in Northeast Tarrant County and throughout Tarrant County. Many of us know that obviously he founded the Town and Country Drug Stores, later sold to CVS. He developed a lot of real estate, the home builder. He helped found the Liberty Bank. He helped found the Bank of North Texas. So he's been a premier businessman in this community for many years. He and his wife Nancy were very philanthropic themselves. Thanks to the foundation that was established at their death, their daughters, Jean Ann and Carolyn Ham McGuire. Carolyn couldn't be here today. On the foundation, they continue to give many dollars to educational endeavors, both at the collegiate level and also at the high school level. But this partnership with the Northeast leadership started about 3 years ago, and I'm glad to say with another $22,000 gift we're making to match this year. The Ham Foundation for 4 years has given $88,000 in matching scholarships. So again, like many of you in this room sit here, and I can't help but see Gary Hamilton sitting out here. Gary and I had the pleasure of working with Alan Hamilton when we were in Bank of North Texas. I won't say that was probably 100 years ago, but looking at Gary and me, it probably was 100 years ago. But anyway, I want to thank Jean Ann. I want to give her moments to say on behalf of her parents that we hope to continue this partnership and hope to increase this partnership as we go forward. So again, to Jean Ann, to your family, we appreciate everything y'all done, and I just want to say a quick word.
My sister couldn't be here, but our family has always been very committed to education. So we love that you're participating in building education avenues for Northeast County, which is our home. And we've lived in different cities and different areas, still do. So it's really wonderful. I'm happy to be participating. Thank you.
We want to begin by saying thank you, Oliver Shelby of the Northeast Leadership Forum. I've had the pleasure of chairing this organization in previous years. I know what it does in this community and how it all come together to make really the way and the lifestyle of not only Northeast Tarrant County, but for so many people across Tarrant County. I say thank you on behalf of that. I'll end by saying the one thing that the Ham Foundation, I had the pleasure of serving with Carolyn and Jean Ann on that foundation. But the reality is, thank God, we do not have to pick the outstanding students. Because we leave that up to the Northeast Foundation. So Carolyn, to you, Shelby, thank y'all so very much. Appreciate it, man. Thank y'all.
It's really April Fool's, it's not a check.
It's not.
Please allow me to introduce Jerry Cantu, Director of Schools and Community Relations for EDCU Credit Union, to make a special announcement.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this forum. I know that we've received a lot of thanks for sponsoring the recognition of today's guest. And to be honest, we should be the people thanking you, especially having the opportunity to thank the guests that represent our education system, our superintendents, school board members, the teachers of the year, those who have managed to navigate the challenging waters over the last couple of years. And being married to a superintendent is something I see on a daily basis, and I understand everything that they've gone through. I'm a retired educator myself for 27 years, and so I can relate to a lot of what they have gone through, what they are going through, and they, of all people, deserve this recognition more than anybody else I can think of. But we also appreciate being invited to join the group of business leaders and elected officials from the Northeast Tarrant area that have allowed us to be a part of this organization. And that's it for EDCU. Just keep us in mind, because we are always here to partner with our educators and also our charitable organization. If there's anything we can do, please let us know.
Thank you, Jerry. We appreciate ECU sponsoring 4 attendees from each of our school districts today. And at this time, please welcome Faye Blue, an NLF board member, a 2011 chairman of the board, a past president of the Texas Association of School Boards. We're a little ahead of schedule, and I'm going to go off script because I don't really know scripts very well. But it is Faye's birthday today. Not only do I want to give her a round of applause, let's sing happy birthday to her. Okay? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Faye. Happy birthday to you.
That was definitely not in the script. I always wanted to spend my birthday with 300 of my closest friends, so thank you. One of these leadership forums, and I think you can tell from the conversation this morning, is very serious about promoting leadership. At this point, we want to pay tribute to some amazing school leaders who provide such excellent education for our students. I am honored to recognize 4 representatives from each of the 7 school districts in Northeast Tarrant County. As I call your district's name and your leaders' names, please stand and we'll recognize the district together. I'm going to ask you to hold your applause until we've introduced all of the districts. And I'm going to ask each of the districts to remain standing. We understand the game plan? Okay. We do recognize that some of our administrators and school board members are traveling because there's a national conference in San Diego this weekend. So some of them won't be with us. But we want to recognize the ones who are here and those who are standing in for some of those who are traveling. We're going to honor from each of the districts the superintendent, the school board president, the elementary teacher of the year, and the secondary teacher of the year. We're going to start with Birdville ISD. From Birdville, we have Dr. Gail Stinson, the superintendent. And she is represented by Associate Superintendent Skip Bassett. We have Joe Talbot, Board President, represented by Board Vice President Kelvin Gillis. Courtney Maxwell, the 2021 Elementary Teacher of the Year. And Colby Blankenship, the 2021 Secondary Teacher of the Year. Hold your applause. You're so good. From Carroll ISD, Dr. Lane Ledbetter, Superintendent. Eric Lannon, Board President. Scott Bishop, 2021 Elementary Teacher of the Year. And Claire Hinkle, 2021 Secondary Teacher of the Year. From Grapevine Colleyville ISD, Dr. Robin Ryan, Superintendent. Oops. Jorge Rodriguez, Board President. Lynette Hollinger, 2021 Elementary Teacher of the Year. And Carolyn Province, 2021 Secondary Teacher of the Year. From HEB ISD, we'll recognize Steve Chapman, retiring Superintendent of the Year, who has led that district beautifully for years. He is represented by the Deputy Superintendent for Educational Operations, Conrad Streeter. We'll also recognize by name the new superintendent of HEB ISD, Dr. Joe Harrington. Matt Romero is the board president. Andrea Marks Garcia, whom we know as Andy, the 2021 Elementary Teacher of the Year. From Keller ISD, Dr. Rick Westfall, Superintendent. Ruthie Keys, Board President. Mandy Schneider, 2021 Elementary Teacher of the Year. And Sandra McCorkle, 2021 Secondary Teacher of the Year. From Northwest ISD, Dr. Ryder Warren, Superintendent. Dr. Ann Davis Simpson, Board President. Aaron Potts, 2021 Elementary Teacher of the Year. And Jeff Oster, 2021 Secondary Teacher of the Year. Our final district from Westlake Academy, Amanda DeGan, Superintendent. Dr. Michelle Bryson, outgoing Executive Director. Sean Wilson, incoming Executive Director. Laura Fisher, Primary Teacher of the Year. And Katie Estrada, Secondary Teacher of the Year. At this point, we will recognize all of these districts. Thank you. As well to Jerry and EECU for sponsoring this for us today.
Thank you, Faye, and happy birthday. Now we are going to present the highest honor of the year, the Distinguished Leadership Award. As we prepare to honor our 2021 Distinguished Leadership Award recipient, I ask that all previous winners of this prestigious award please stand and be recognized. You can see from the list that's on your table, it's quite the who's who, so we're grateful to have those in attendance. And now one of the highlights of our luncheon, I'd like to ask the Honorable Oscar Trevino, Mayor of North Richland Hills, past chairman of NLF, and the 2008 recipient of the Distinguished Leadership Award, and last year's recipient, John Fletcher, to join me on the stage.
Good afternoon. What an honor for me to be here today to introduce this year's Distinguished Leadership Award. I've asked the 2018 recipient of this award, Tom Lombard, who is a dear friend of the recipient, to join me in the presentation. This award was created in 1991 to honor a person who has given many years of service to the Northeast County area. The honoree may be an elected official, a member of the Chamber of Commerce, a civic organization, an educational organization, a nonprofit organization, or just a general contributor to the quality of life and well-being of the citizens of the Northeast County area. This year's award winner is someone whose service spans all of those areas. If there's a cause to be championed, you're likely to find him on the front lines. He does not sit back and wait for someone else to make things happen. He believes in giving back to his community, and he gives back generously with his time as both an elected official and a community volunteer. I very often give Tito a hard time and tell him that he just can't say no. But he just won't say no. But truthfully, it's that he cares greatly for his community and for the people that live and work in it. He gives his time to so many organizations because he believes in them and he believes in the people that they serve. He is a servant leader, and if there's ever a need, he's the first one to step up and volunteer. For these and many other reasons, we are honored to present this year's Distinguished Leadership Award to our friend and associate, Tito Rodriguez.
Thank you. T-shirts and photos available outside. You know, what the mayor didn't tell you is that early on, of course, he is my mentor, much older than I am, and I look up to him. He told me one time that I needed alligator arms. I said, alligator arms? Why? He said, so when they ask for volunteers, you can't raise your arm like that. But truly, I'm honored to be the recipient of this award. I have cut my speech down, Randy, from 45 minutes to 25 minutes. Pass the hat, and I'll stop earlier. I am truly honored and humbled by this recognition. Not to mention that I was totally surprised when I received a call from Randy Clinton. I at first thought that he was mistaken because I had written a letter of support for another nominee. So naturally assumed that Randy was confused. Thank you to the Northeast Leadership Forum and to the United Way of Perryman County, the group that nominated me for this prestigious NLF Distinguished Leadership Award. And a very special thank you to my friends and acquaintances who have taken time from their busy schedules to be here today to share this day and recognition with me. Many of whom I have the pleasure of working with and serving with. I truly appreciate your friendship and your support. I am blessed to be involved in numerous municipal, civic, and charitable organizations in the region and in the state, and do so much for our communities and our residents. Sue and I have for years donated and contributed to several organizations that we believed in and whose causes and missions we believed in. But my goal was always to someday, when I retire, to be able to not only give monetarily, but also to give of my time. I consider it an honor when I am asked to participate and assist. Children, family, and elder causes are my weaknesses and my passion. I would like to introduce my wife, Sue. My daughter, Charlotte. Thank you for being here today. I cannot do what I do were it not for the unwavering support and encouragement of my family and friends. So thank you so much for all y'all do, and enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Tito. Well deserved. Now I'd like to call up Mr. John Fletcher. He will introduce today's speaker.
I've been waiting for this for a long time.
There's absolutely no pressure on today's speaker. Sure, you might not have won Super Bowls or have a Hail Mary on last year's speaker, Drew Pearson. However, he meets with congressmen, senators, presidents, and CEOs who have a lot to say with their own Hail Marys while waiting for his insights. Our speaker this afternoon is more than a brilliant economist. He actually is one of the most brilliant people alive on this planet because he just told me so. Ray Perryman made a name for himself back in the early 80s, but he was the only person to predict that the glut of oil would happen and there would be a crash in oil prices, and he was absolutely right. He was the person that Ross Perot Jr. told to meet about a massive vacant field and strategized about an inland port in a couple of developments called Hillwood and Alliance, Texas. Texas Monthly calls him the most quoted man in Texas. Business Week calls him a world-class scholar. And that newspaper on the other side of Highway 360 calls him the state's preeminent economist and a barbecue connoisseur. Please welcome the economist who will tell it like it is, and he also is a published author. He will be auctioning off some of his books called Survive and Conquer Texas in the 80s, Money, Power, Tragedy, and Hope. We're going to have a lot of fun. Be prepared to learn. Be prepared to smile. Please welcome my friend, Ray Perryman.
Thank you, John. Is this all working okay? Are we good? Thank you. I appreciate. I always like to check. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's very nice. Appreciate John's kind words. You know exactly what we're getting. A friend introduced you. Mr. Rodriguez, congratulations on this award. When I heard about the award, you know, I looked at the list, and obviously everything knows good. I looked at it, and Vicky Truitt is a dear friend of mine, and she's won it, and Glenn Goody is a dear friend of mine, and he's won it. So I thought, this is really something special. These are really good people. Then I saw John Fletcher won it. Yeah, I love John. Don't get me wrong, he's like a grandfather to me. But I never thought of him in quite that way. And so I decided to ask some folks around the chambers and people I talked to. I said, what do you think of John? What do you really think? I was kind of taken back here. I was surprised. And they said, two different people said to me, said, brother, he's like a god. I said, what? He said, yeah, he's like a god. And I said, well, I love him, but explain to me how he's like a god. And they said, well, we've never seen him. Anytime he does anything, it's a miracle. No, it is great to be here with you. It's great that we've been in person, you know. You enjoyed that. I like that. Seriously, John's daughter and my daughter were best friends in elementary school. So we go back a ways. We go back to all when we first met through our daughter's friendship. But, and I'm not going to say what decade that was. but anyway, it's great to be with you. It's great to be here. It's so nice we can all get together like this again. And you know what I can say. It's been a rough couple of years in a lot of ways. And I tell you, this is great. Full room. I love this. You're well worth putting on a pair of pants for. Which is something I haven't had to do for all my speeches for the last couple of years. But anyway, it's great to be here. I mean, we all, no one escaped the pandemic. And so it hit your business, it hit your family, it hit your friends. I mean, it was so broad-based. Everybody had something. My family had a few issues, nothing major. But I guess the biggest issue we had was, I'm on the road on the average about 300 days a year. And during the pandemic, I was home about 300 days. That's just quite an adjustment. It is. My wife had always said the secret to our marriage was we've been married 30 years and dead in 3 weeks. And so I was all of a sudden home. And so one day I was on her absolute last number. I mean, totally on her last number. And I said, well, honey, you know, the problem is I'm kind of like bad tasting medicine. I'm sort of better in smaller doses. And she looked at me and she said, you are absolutely nothing like bad tasting medicine because eventually it makes you feel better. So, one more quick story about her, I can't help it. John mentioned I've been blessed with a bunch of awards and stuff. People said some very nice and kind things about me over the years, and some not so kind things. That's what happens when you jump into every box you find. But anyway, a couple of years back, I got an award that really meant something to me. It really did. And I grew up in a small town with rural expenses. About 1,000 people when I was there. It's about 5,000 now. I got pretty successful after I left. But anyway, they started a distinguished alumni at the local school district, and they were kind enough to give it to me. And that really meant a lot to me because that was people that were with me, grew up. And they know what a nerd you were and that sort of thing. And they were still kind enough to do that. I went over there and spent a couple of days and saw a lot of old friends and had a nice time. And my wife asked me what it was like growing up in a town that small. And I said, it was great, I loved it. It was wonderful. Nobody locked the doors, you ride your bike everywhere, it was great. And she said, well, what were the challenges? And I said, I don't think we had any, it was pretty good. She said, oh, come on, we had some problems when you in a town that small. I said, well, the only thing that bothered me a little bit was, we were so small we had to take driver's education and sex education in the same car. She thought about that for a minute, and she said, Ray, you know, that makes perfect sense. You can't drive either. Okay, I'll stop that. What I thought I would do is, all right, if you like this, I can do this for now. But anyway, I have a lot to say because I think there's a lot going on. I mean, I've kind of out of the last couple of years. Anything happened? There is a lot going on. I want to try to give you some perspective on some of that stuff and try to make some sense out of some of it for you. And hopefully I'll have some time at the end for questions, but relax, be comfortable because we're going to round up here. And don't try to take notes because my kids say I talk at 400 words a minute with Gus at 700. So but anyway, I thought the first thing we'd do, nobody wants to dwell on the pandemic, but I thought I'd point out just a couple of things about it that made it so different and kind of difficult to adjust to and that sort of thing from an economic perspective. Obviously from a health and safety perspective, there's all sorts of other issues. But the first thing is, normally when we have a recession in this country, it's not because of something like this. And strangely enough, it's not the old-fashioned business cycle that we have taught you about if you ever had in your economics class. And the economy's never been a sine curve. It's never had these smooth ups and downs, ever. But we did have cycles for a long time because most economies start out as agricultural economies. And when you have an agricultural economy, you're going to have cycles based on the weather. And so the economy did kind of have cycles. But as we got more sophisticated, more things going on, one thing can be going down, another thing can be going up, and if you're diverse enough, you can keep right on growing. If you think about our last few economic expansions in this country, they've all been 8, 9, 10 years. And the last one was 11 years, right before the pandemic hit. They've all been really long. And in fact, the last 4 have been 4 of the 5 longest in the history of the country. Interestingly enough, the other one got into the Washington administration, so that goes back a ways. But anyway, now it wasn't all that great back then anyway, so we're really not that sure. But anyway, but normally we have, like I said, and we see that in Texas all the time because, for example, right now, the price of oil's up. Y'all may have noticed that. Well, if you live in Midland or Odessa or Houston, that may well be a good thing, okay? But if you live somewhere else, it's probably not a good thing. And so one thing can go up, other things go down, and we can kind of keep growing through all that stuff. We've been managed to do that pretty well. And when we have a recession, it's always because we did something stupid. It's never that we've had. I don't remember, and I've studied centuries of this stuff. I've never seen an economic expansion that died of old age. I've never seen one. It's something like we went crazy about mortgages a few years ago. Gave everybody who could find a mortgage whether they needed one or not. And that created a problem. A few years before that, we got all hopped up on .com stocks. We decided every stock whose last name was .com was worth billions of dollars. And a few years before that, we decided to syndicate a whole bunch of buildings and savings and loans, not paying any attention to whether anybody go in or not. It's all, we create a bubble, the bubble burst, and then we kind of fix that and go forward. This one was a big force from the outside that hit us. That's one thing that was very different. The other thing was how fast and how hard it hit us. And I think that's the thing that really caught everybody off guard. I can cite a million statistics. I'll say only cite a couple. One is, if you go back to the Great Recession in 2008, which was the worst thing we've seen since the Great Depression, the mortgage bubble, we lost in this country 9.4 million jobs in 14 months. So 600,000 jobs every month. I mean, it was pretty brutal. But 9.4 million jobs in 14 months, and that's the worst we've ever seen. This was 22 million jobs in 2 months. 2.5 times as many jobs in 1/7 the time. And we've just never seen anything like this. It just dropped like a rock. And one of the interesting things was there's a statistic that people like me look at all the time, but before this thing happened, nobody ever looked at it. A few people look at it now. It's called initial claims for unemployment, which is a very long-winded way of saying layoffs. Because the reason you file an initial claim for unemployment is you just lost your job. So it's basically layoffs. And that number, with the reason we pay attention to it, is it comes out every week. So it's a pretty decent snapshot of what's going on. And the highest that number had ever been was back in the 80s when we got to 695,000. In the Great Recession, we got to 660,000. Almost 700,000 people laid off in 1 week, but it had never broken 700,000. That was the highest it ever got. In April 2020, it got to 6.9 million in 1 week. Okay? 10 times the highest number we've ever seen. But what's even more interesting is, when you want to get your arm around this thing, for the next 54 weeks, it never went below 700,000. We had never been above 700,000 before this thing started. And we stayed above it for 54 straight weeks. Okay? So, I mean, and all that to say, it was really deeply wrong. The U.S. economy lost, I'd say, 22 million jobs. That's about 14% of our total economy. As of this morning, with the new numbers that came out, we've gotten most of them back. We're down about 1.7 million from where we were, which is about 1.4% or so. So we're about 1.1% actually. So we're actually making a little bit of headway there, almost back to even. Texas got all its jobs back in 19 months, which is pretty good. In November, we got all our jobs back. We're up about 200,000 jobs. We lost 1.4 million. We're up about 200,000 jobs from where we were before this thing started now, which is a little over, almost 2%. This area, Metroplex, did even better than you would expect. We got all yours back in 15 months. July, you had already made up all the losses in 15 months. That's really, really remarkable. You're up now about almost 4%, about 150,000 jobs. And I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but let these two sink in. I just mentioned Texas is net up about 200,000 jobs. The Metroplex is net up about 150,000 jobs. Okay? That kind of tells you how well you're doing. Austin's up about 60. So if you add the Metroplex and Austin together, you got everybody else is broke even, some up, some down. Everybody else is kind of broke even. And the Metroplex and Austin sort of growth has driven the net growth that we've had thus far. You've all seen a lot of that happening. Our forecast for the area is that's going to continue. We see a lot of momentum in this area. We're projecting growth about 3.8% a year for the next 5 years or so on average. A little bit front loaded, but nonetheless, it's a very healthy economy. You see that all the time. New locations, new expansions, new activity taking place. Almost every day there's some kind of new indicator, some kind of new announcement or something that talks about how well you're doing. What we're going to do now is I'm going to shift gears and talk about some things that normally I wouldn't spend much time on. Usually when I talk to an audience in Texas, I don't spend too much time talking about the national economy and the world economy, but there's a lot going on right now. And so I thought I'd kind of plunge right in and talk about supply chains, inflation, and the workforce, and you know, the Ukraine, and everything's going on with oil prices and that sort of thing, just kind of the border and immigration, the whole 9 yards, just kind of covered all. I promise I'll make everybody mad at some point. I take pride in the fact that I'm an equal opportunity offender. I like to defend both parties every chance I get. And you talk to a lot of my friends in the football team, I've succeeded pretty well at that. But anyway, I'm going to try to give you perspective that's maybe a little different than what you see on the evening news, because it's hard to get this stuff right sometimes. No offense. You do a good job. We've known each other for years. You do a good job. Yeah. But and Bob, you do a good job too. Anyway, let me just kind of put out. It really doesn't matter where you start. They're all kind of interconnected. I'll start with supply chain, because we're hearing a lot about that right now. Think about the world economy for just a minute. Kind of visualize it in your mind as $100 trillion engine. Because that's about how much we produce every year. $100 trillion engine. Biggest engine you can possibly imagine. And it's been purring along for about a decade. It's doing good. It needs an oil change every now and then. It's kind of chugging along, doing okay, you know. And then one day you stop it. And I don't mean you tap on the brakes and ease it down. I mean you shut off the key, jump out, let it run into a tree. And then you take a bunch of sledgehammers, and you go in there and just bang on it for a while. Just bang it up good. Okay? And then you leave it out in the elements for about 6 or 8 months. And then you try to start it. And it kind of chugs a little bit, it kind of gets going a little bit, and then you do the same thing all over again. And then you come along a year and a half later, so okay, let's start it up now. What do you think is going to happen? It's not going to be a smooth start. You can't shut down to the degree we shut down as many things as we shut down, and come back very, very quickly. And so it's taken a while to get the goods back into the ports, to get the ports geared up to operate, to get the truckers geared up to deliver stuff that comes to the ports, to get the stuff made that goes into other things that need to be made. And we had some special factors come out in that thing along the way too. The kinds of things that are always happening in the economy, but we can roll with them usually, but when you layer on top of a pandemic, they get really bad. For example, this big chip shortage we've had. Okay, can't get chips anywhere. There's 3 big factories that make those chips in the world. The one in South Korea had a huge fire right in the middle of this. Like I said, we could have rolled with that, take away everything else that's going on, but on top of everything was hard. You may have heard we had a cold snap in Texas last year. You may have heard of it. And okay, we had a cold snap. When you shut down the ports on the Texas Gulf Coast for a week or 10 days, you create major problems in delivering things in the economy. Because people don't realize this, but 1 out of every $6 of exports from this country is from the state of Texas. Okay. And a lot of them, go through this airport. It's not far from here, but most of them, ultimately, about 90% eventually start out in the water. And so when that can't happen, a lot of things a lot of dominoes start to fall. So we've had a lot of those kind of problems. The nice thing about markets is, if you ever get really, really bored, you find it once in a while I give a lecture on markets. And I mean, it will put you to sleep in no time. But one of the nice things, and they're good and the bad, because there's both. They're wonderful, they do a lot of great things, but one of the best things they do is, anytime you create a problem, immediately create the incentive to solve the problem. That's what markets do, because all of a sudden there's profit. If you can be the one that can get the deliveries working, if you can be the one to make things happen, you can make more money. And so as soon as you have a problem, you start the process of solving it. And that's basically what's been happening. We would be probably 80% of the way through it right now had it not been for the recent thing in Ukraine. That's back this up again, because it creates uncertainty, it interrupts oil supplies, it messes up the agricultural universe. Ukraine and Russia combined provide 25% of all the grain in the world. Now, and that's not only the bread we eat, it's the feed for the animals too. So I mean, there's a whole thing that goes through a lot of different channels. All of that gets bogged up and slowed down as well. And so there's just, these things are dancing. I think it's going to take us close to the end of the year now to be out of this, but the process is ongoing. And then I guess from that I'll shift for just a minute here into inflation. We all heard about that. We all talk about that right now, that sort of thing. Inflation, there's a lot of different pieces to it. I'm going to try to break it out a little bit here. But you've probably heard the definition at some point in your life. The simple shorthand definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. That's how we really define inflation in the man on the street definition. It's actually pretty good. Well, the too few goods is that supply chain I just talked about. We can't get the stuff out. So that's one half of it. Either half can cause problems. We got both of them going at once. The too much money happened this way. As you all know, during the pandemic, the federal government made a decision to spend a lot of money. And I don't fault that decision at all. In fact, I was kind of in the middle of some of it. Because we had people who were going to starve otherwise. We had very well-run local small businesses, probably some of you in this room, who went months without revenue. And, they need a hand up, okay? And we had to do some of these things. It comes with a price. In terms of that. Basically, the government was faced with a bad choice and an absolutely catastrophic choice. There was no good choice. And so they chose the bad one, which is good. Okay? Sometimes that's the best you can do. And they did that, but they didn't do it perfectly, obviously, because they can't. I mean, they didn't go door to door, knock on the door, and say, okay, let's evaluate your situation, see how much money you get. How much money you need. They can't do that. They write formulas. So the end result was a bunch of people got money they really didn't need. And I see some heads nodding. You got a little extra cash in your pocket, okay. Well, now, put yourself in this situation. Some of you probably are in this situation. You've been cooped up for a year. You want to get out so bad you can't stand it. And you got a little extra money in your pocket. All of a sudden, they ring the bell and say, okay, you can go out now. What are you going to do? You're going to run out and spend that money. And that's what we did. So that's too much money. Okay, so we have both things going on at once. And that's driving a lot of this, and then some special factors. I mean, the war has ratcheted up oil prices even more, and that's had some impact. We're now going through the Strategic Petroleum Reserve release, which will help a little bit. It's not going to solve the problem. I mean, the release we're talking about is a really big one, but it's 5% of U.S. demand every day and 1% of world demand every day. So it's not like we're all of a sudden gonna have $2 gas again. That's not what's coming our way. But I think it can help a little bit, and we can kind of help get us through some of this. And I probably don't have time to say everything I want to say about energy today, but we got to do some long-term stuff to fix energy. And at the same time, we deal with climate issues. Not like, as I say, if I have time, I'll talk about that a little bit. But that's all what I would call the short-term inflation. There's only one other thing I want to say about that. You're seeing a lot of headlines right now. I know you've all seen this is the worst inflation since the 70s and 80s. This is bad. And statistically, it is. Percentage growth is the worst. But this is not the late 1970s and early 1980s, the end of the Carter administration, the end of the Reagan administration. This is not that time. This is not that time. This is not that time. And I'll just give you a couple of simple examples. But I have kind of a little bit of first-hand knowledge of that quite by accident. Back when I was a little bitty baby economist, and I was working on my dissertation out of Rice, I built the first really big model of the U.S. monetary system, actually the global monetary system, and all that. And at that point in time, there weren't any others. And so when Paul Volcker became chairman of the Federal Reserve in that time period, they decided to wrench inflation out of the economy. I had the only game in town, so I was in my 20s. They pulled me up there to help. So I got kind of a baptism by fire on that whole thing. But I got to see it from the inside, which was also good. And those of you, many of you in this room were not old enough to remember this, but I certainly am. In the late 70s, early 80s, if you went into the bank to open a savings account, just plain old savings account, not a CD or anything, if you just went to the bank, I see your head, now you remember that, yeah. Plain old savings account. You got 5% interest. If you went to the savings loan, you got 5.25%, because they wouldn't, the houses had plenty of money. But yeah, I see some head shaking, y'all remember that. If you think about that, what if you go to the bank today to buy a CD? Yeah, it's like, yeah, it rounds off to zero. So, anyway, but the point being, when everybody got 5% to walk in the door with no risk or anything else, you set a floor on inflation. We had structurally built-in inflation back then in the entire church. We had to read all that out. It was not uncommon to have contracts with construction folks out here with 30-day escalation clauses in them. They raised their construction costs every 30 days. I see some heads nodding about that one too. I mean, it was a different world. All of that's gone. We don't have that today. So this is not a long-term, we're stuck with this forever kind of thing. We do have to work through the issues we have now. And we'll get the supply chain fixed, spend all that extra money, that'll happen. But we will be left with a little bit higher long-term inflation than we've had in the past. Not a whole lot, but of course, being 1.5% to 2% will probably be 2.5%, something like that. A little bit more. And that's because that's the price we pay for all that money that the federal government had to put out there. Now the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. And they're starting to bring the balance sheet down to a more reasonable thing, not put quite so much money out every month and that sort of thing. They're going to watch that as this Ukrainian situation plays out and other things, and they will, but they're starting to do that. So, it's going to build in a little more inflation. As I say, there was not a good choice. And that's the price we'll pay for picking a bad choice over the catastrophic choice. And so we're going to have some inflation with us for a while. Talk about the workforce in this whole thing, too. If you believe what you read, let me mention one more thing about the inflation and supply chain and all that stuff, just because the media gets it wrong. Not you guys, but the big guys. You've probably seen the headlines, and hopefully you didn't pay too much attention to it. There's been headlines lately where they said trade deficit was the highest in history last month. We're just getting killed. The trade deficit is terrible. That's a good thing. The reason the trade deficit is so high right now is we're unloading boats. You can't, as long as it stuff's in the water, it doesn't count as an import. So if you unload 4 or 5 months worth of boats in 1 month, you're going to get a big number. And that's what we've been able to do is the ports have gone on double shifts. We're getting more of this stuff out there. If we're counting the imports that have been sitting in the water. Okay, so don't get freaked out by that. Okay. Workforce. Again, if you read some of that stuff, you think nobody's ever going to work again. We've seen the end of work and we know it. And things have changed. This was a life-changing event. A lot of people reassessed their world. But the thing is, about the workforce shortages is a major issue we're going to have to deal with. But it was a major issue before the pandemic ever started. It's going to be a major issue after the pandemic. And it has to do with demographics. It didn't have a little bit to do with the pandemic. I'll show you in about 20%. But it's mostly just the fact that the baby boomers are getting older and retiring.
The young people aren't coming in as fast as the workforce, and we just don't have enough folks. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. It's not even more complicated than that. You hear the statistics right now, we have 10 million job openings in the country. But what they forget to tell you is we had 8 million before the pandemic ever started. We have 2 million more. And here's why. The number of people who are participating in the workforce of the working age population before the pandemic was 63.4%. It was about 50% forever, for years and years and years and decades, because almost every guy worked and almost every lady didn't. And then starting in the 60s and 70s, all females in the workforce got way up in the 70s. Okay? And then since that time, everybody's been working not quite as much, so it's been going down. But it was 63.4% before the pandemic. It's 61.7% today. So 1.7% of the people have decided, yeah, we're not doing this, at least for now. That's coming up a little bit even now. But, 1.7%. That's not everybody leaving the workforce forever. But 1.7% of 150 million people, which is how many people in the workforce, is there you got your 2 million that gets you from 8 to 10. That's where it comes from. And so once the pandemic's behind us to whatever extent, if it only is put behind us, whatever happens, these other problems resolve themselves, we're still going to have a workforce crisis. And that brings me to a topic John asked me to talk about. I try to leave it out, because I don't want to get in trouble with this one. And that's immigration, when you border. That's what's going on with the border. And let me kind of break that down for you a bit. There's 3 different pieces I'm going to focus on in terms of immigration. One of them is the thing that gets the most publicity. That's all the folks from Central America who are coming up here right now. Okay? But that really doesn't have much to do with our workforce at all. I think the only solution to this one, I've talked to the folks in both parties in Washington about this, but realistically, I think the only solution is we have to help those countries. They are riddled with gangs and violence, and they've had a huge drought in what used to be a lush agricultural region. Okay? Now think about it. If you were a mama or a daddy, and your kid was starving, and your kid was subject to being killed any time, right? You'd probably try to get him out of there. And that's what you do. If you got caught and sent back, you'd probably try to get him out of there again. I mean, so it's going to take solving those problems to solve that problem. I mean, we can't pass enough laws to say don't come in to fix that. We can try if we want to, but the bottom line is, if you can see opportunity for safety and opportunity in one place, and death and starvation in another, and you have some kids, you're not going to stay down there. And so that's really not much to do with the workforce. There's 2 pieces I want to talk about that have a lot to do with our workforce. One is what I would call, for lack of a better, traditional undocumented workers, the folks who come over here on a regular basis, primarily from Mexico. They're about 10% of our workforce. Most people don't realize that about 1 out of 10 people who are working in the state of Texas today are undocumented. They're 40% of our construction workforce. They're over 40% of our agricultural workforce. They're about 30% of our hospitality workforce. So if you want to grow anything, build anything, or go anywhere, we kind of need some of those folks. Now what that says is it doesn't say let them do what we're doing now. It says pass an immigration reform that lets you use workers when you need them. And this is not rocket science. We're short of workers. They have them over there. They want to come. It shouldn't take a genius to figure out some way to make that happen. It's not illegal, putting risk on employers, putting safety risk on people, and that sort of thing. So make it, just basically what's happening now is it's part of the labor market. We're just forcing it to be inefficient. And through sensible laws, we can make it more efficient. The other piece of it, which nobody wants to talk about, is, because everybody thinks about that when we think about immigration, it's one of those 2 things. But let me lay something else on that. 25% of doctors practicing in this country today are immigrants. 22% of the scientists and engineers are immigrants. I don't mean their daddy were immigrants, I mean they're immigrants. 22% of our other healthcare workers. Bottom line is, we need those people. When you're not making people and you need people, and there's people over there, again, I don't think it's rocket science. But our policies right now, 5 or 6 years ago, we were admitting 1 million people a year. Now we admit 250,000. And we have a workforce shortage. We're 10 million workers short, and we're not letting folks in. So again, what that says is do it right. Do sensible policies that preserve safety, preserve integrity of our country and everything else, but figure out a way to use those workers. And that's what the market's done, is figure out a way to use those workers. It's been forced to do it in an inefficient way. So that's kind of a take on that. I will say a little more about demographics at the end if I have a little bit of time. But I also want to say just a little bit about energy before I jump forward to something else. Okay, because energy is very interesting right now. Our firm has just done a study, we haven't even released it yet, but our firm has done a study where we really did a major dive on the climate, the environment, and everything else. Because we do have a climate crisis. A lot of people don't want to admit it, but we do. There's no two ways about it. We have a climate crisis. And we have to deal with it. But we also have to have energy resources for the future. And we literally took the government's own numbers. We took the Department of Energy's numbers, the same folks who say we don't want any pipelines, we don't want any drilling, we don't want anybody to port ship anything. Those very folks, we took their numbers. And we looked at them and unvarnished their numbers. Those numbers alone show we need 30% more oil and natural gas in the future than we need today. Even with a huge growth, with 400% growth in renewables. If you really get aggressive and have 600% growth in renewables, you still need a little bit more than you have now. So we're going to have those resources. We're also going to have to burn them cleaner. One party doesn't like it when I say we're going to have to have that stuff because they're going to get rid of it. The other party gets mad when I say, but we can't do it the way we're doing it now. So I hope I offended everybody there. but it's the truth that there's places where the carbon content's different. There's ways to capture carbon that we can incentivize. There's all kinds of things we can do. When people talk about electric vehicles, they're wonderful, they're great, they're very good. But they don't stop emissions. They transfer the emissions from the road to the power plant. But that's a good thing because it's harder to stop it going up and down the road than it is in one fixed point. So that's a good thing. You can capture it better at one fixed point. But a huge percentage of even with renewable growth at 400% or 500% in the next 30 years, a big chunk of new electricity is going to be generated with natural gas. And so, so again, they just shift them around. It's all that to say we have energy policy really messed up right now. And we have climate policy really messed up right now. And we need to fix that in the long term. That takes me back to the circle. I said I want to say a little bit more about the strategic reserve. I think right now that's a good thing. Is get some out there to try to help the situation, lower folks' gasoline prices a little bit and some other costs and that sort of thing. People don't realize that we talk about gasoline. That's about a little over 40% of what petroleum is used for. It's diesel that hauls everything around. It's jet fuel that hauls our jets. But let's get out of transportation for a minute. We've still got 30% of it left. It's plastics, synthetic fibers, fertilizers, paint, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals. I mean, it is everywhere in this economy. So when the price of oil goes up, it's not just the one that's in our face every day. That's when we think about it. Can't avoid it. But it has so many roles to play in our economy. And when you do these kind of things you're doing now, but you say, we don't want you investing in this in the future, the countries can't raise capital to do what they need to do today. And so we just got it messed up. We need to have policies that say we want to move as quickly as we can and as fast as we can to safe, reliable, renewable energy. We need to get as much of that stuff as we can get. If we get all that we can possibly get, we're still going to need some of this other stuff. So let's try to figure that out a way to do that better too. And I'm fortunate I'm on the House Energy Advisory Committee and the Consulting Department, so I have to sit and act like they're listening to me pretty often. I'm not sure they really are. But they nod. They do nod. But then they go out and do the same thing they've always done. But anyway, but I want to give you the other side of that equation right quick. There is a solution, another solution. If we want to get rid of oil and gas, we can. That solution is we don't let the global economy grow. Because you can't grow without energy. That's the only other solution. We don't grow. There are 700 million people in this world, twice the population of the United States, who live on $1.90 a day or less. And there's some poverty we can't even imagine out there. And if we want the world to overcome that and be a better place, most of the economic growth is right now is coming in those regions. If we want to support that, we have to support their development. And with that comes energy and cleaner energy. And we got a chance to start from scratch there and do it right. So there's a whole lot going on there with all that. Okay. Final thing I want to talk about, and hopefully I've got a little time. I'm right up. I don't know if you missed questions. One final thing I want to mention. I focus on a lot of different issues here right now, and if we have some time for questions, I'm happy to go in a different direction too. But the final thing I want to say is we really think about this short-term stuff all the time because we have to get it and live with it every day. That's understandable. But in the grand scheme of things, most of the stuff we hear about every day, it's not going to determine where we are in 20 or 30 years. It's really not. I mean, You know, you'll see the stock market fall or rise 300 points, 500 points based on whether Microsoft or Amazon was a penny above or a penny below what the analysts guessed they would earn. You know, does that really affect the total value of all the major corporate assets in the United States for the next 20, discounted to the present for all time because one company missed something by a penny, or that we thought the CPI would come in at 5.6%, it came in at 5.8% for 1 month? No. But, you know, we tend to overreact and work on that. You look at the long term, three things drive economies. One of them I already talked about a little bit. One of them is technology. You're obviously in an area right here that's really benefiting from the growth of that right now. And the pandemic, if anything, created some more needs. And when you create needs, you create technology to solve needs. We would not have gotten these vaccines as quickly as need had arose. I saw the other day, you may have seen at the airport where you press the button on the elevator and automatically sanitizes. We wouldn't have that technology out in the market today if this thing hadn't happened. Much like we wouldn't have all the retinal scanners and that sort of stuff if 9/11 hadn't happened. It would have eventually happened, but we accelerated the technology because it creates a need. That's what we did. And so I think if anything, that was probably going to, not going to change it dramatically, but it is going to accelerate just a little bit. The second thing is the trade and cost patterns. That is, where's the cheapest to make something? And the answer to that question is quite often China, Malaysia, South Korea, someplace like that. And that's fine. They do things better, faster, cheaper. We're all better off. We buy stuff from them. We use it in our stuff. But companies have kind of figured out now that sometimes you can't get that stuff. And that's caused a major redevelopment to begin to take place here in North America. And I think this area will benefit from it a lot. Good example, I mentioned chips earlier. There hadn't been a chip plant in this country in 15 to 20 years. Okay? In the last 3 months, we have seen TI announce a $30 billion plant just north of here up in Sherman. We've seen Samsung announce a $17 billion plant just south of us down in Taylor. By the way, they have some really good, Louis Mello's a really good barbecue. That guy got a damn beer to work for the brisket. And they just, Intel just announced a $20 billion in Ohio. I don't know how they screwed up with Ohio, but the point is, $70 billion in new investment in the last 3 months in something we hadn't invested in 15 years. Because you realize we may pay a little bit more over here because our labor costs are higher or whatever, but it's better to have a safe supply and be sustainable. That part of profitability is sustainability. That message is coming through. So I think that actually helps the country a lot. Obviously, we compete very well here in Texas for those things. So I think that's one. The third one is demographics. And it's a boring subject. I have a good friend who used to run the Census Bureau, a very good demographer, retired now. And I told him one time, I said, the thing about demography is you guys are guys that are good with numbers but don't have the personality to be an accountant. Because, it is the science, it's literally the science of how many people are born, how many people die, and where they move in between. And that's what demographics is. That's what it is. It's not exactly blasting off rockets or something. But anyway, but it drives our world in ways we can't even imagine. And I mentioned that workforce shortage. That is 100% because of demographics. That's why we have it. I want to give you just a few numbers here about Texas because you're obviously a very influential group of folks in leadership and that sort of thing. And we need to get some messages out there. I think you guys are some of the people who help me. So I'm going to go on my soapbox for a minute. And I warn you, I'm almost 5'7" when I get on my soapbox. Okay. But anyway, let's talk about demographics for a minute. The census came out not long ago. There were 1 million fewer people in this country under the age of 18 than were 10 years ago. We already have a workforce shortage. There's 1 million fewer people under the age of 18 than there were 10 years ago. Okay? There are 440,000 more people under the age of 18 in the state of Texas. So literally the country would be down 1.44 million if it wasn't for us. We made up a third of it roughly. What that tells us is we have a really great opportunity here. Because we have the raw material for what's going to drive the future of this country. There's no question about it. And I often say, the oil and gas industry has been very good to Texas. It's going to be very good to Texas in the future. But all the oil wells that ever drilled and ever will be drilled are not as important to the future of Texas as these kids in these schools right now. I know a lot of you are honored today for your work in these schools, and I applaud you for that, because it's very, very important. Here's my concern, okay? If you take the combination of the Hispanic school enrollment in Texas and the black enrollment in Texas, Hispanics growing very rapidly, blacks fairly stable. You take the two of those combined today, it's almost 2/3 of our enrollment. And it's rising very quickly because the Hispanic population is younger, which is rising very quickly. And that's wonderful, it's diversity, it's great, it brings all kinds of great things to us. But the families that those kids come from have about 8%, less than 8% of the household wealth in the state of Texas. Okay? So think about that, 2/3 of the kids, 8% of the money. What if you need some software? What if you need a tutor? What if you need a summer enrichment program? What if you need a broadband subscription? Those things are very tough. They're very tough to come by. It makes it a real challenge to educate. There's also some other challenges. 20% of the kids in our schools today have a language barrier. 69% are economically disadvantaged. 80% of the growth in the last 10 years is in disadvantaged students. Think about that. 80% of the net growth. Because I mentioned those other populations, I didn't mention Anglos. We actually have 125,000 fewer Anglo kids than we had 10 years ago in the schools, but we have 55,000 more that are economically disadvantaged. So I mean, you begin to see the picture that we're painting here. And one, I do a lot of work in humanitarian efforts and that sort of thing. This one really grabs me sometimes. If you randomly walk into 2 classrooms in the state of Texas, on average, 1 kid is homeless. That's the reality today. Okay? And I'm going to give you a couple more numbers, and then I'll stop giving you numbers. What that says is we have a population that on average is a little more difficult to educate than the average, and we know that. We're more challenging to educate than the average, and it's absolutely essential that we do. Yet we rank 41st in one measure and 43rd in the other in per student spending. And that's not saying money's the only answer. I mean, you need to spend it smartly and do the right things, but we need to really be focused on how to build up our schools in a great way. 71% of new jobs we'll create in the next 15 years are going to require some type of certification or training. Might not necessarily a college degree or graduate degree or something, but at least something beyond the traditional high school diploma. Our adult literacy rate in Texas right now is 40%. So the folks who are already working can't do it, and we got to make sure these kids can. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like. The last couple of numbers I'll give you. One, the Census Bureau does. And every 2 or 3 years, and it's a fascinating number to me, they don't get much publicity, but they look at how many people were born in a state, end up living in that state when they're adults. And how many people just kind of, they grow up in a place, end up in a place. Texas leads the country in that. Probably not too surprising if you think about it. But it's 78% of the last number. So almost 435 kids we educate is going to be in our workforce. Yeah, we'll bring some in from other places and do all that kind of stuff, but the fundamental base of the workforce we have is going to be the workforce that we train. I'll give you one more number. This one comes from a highly reliable source, the Perryman group. I'm telling you, those guys are good. Now, I was messaging this in the last session, I think it was session 4, I think I was messaging this one day, and we did a simulation of our models, and we said, what if the quality of Texas education stays exactly the same as it is in the sense of the percentage of people we graduate from elementary school, junior high, high school, college, graduate school, professional school, technical school, the whole 9 yards, we just stay where we are. We don't get better, we don't get worse. By ethnic group. And then we just let demographics take over and do what it's going to do. Because we're not, that's part of the equation we don't control. Okay? If that happens in 15 years, the average person, not family, the average person in Texas, take away all the inflation and all that stuff, will have $6,000 of today's dollars less income every year than they have today. What does that say about that great workforce that lets us attract all these high-tech industries? It's not going to be here. What does that say about the social safety net we will have to support all those people? It is going to be here. So all of a sudden you find yourself in a low-growth, high-need state. That's not a place we want to be. So I say that, as I say, it's kind of to say that this is the greatest opportunity a state could possibly have. It swamps anything else. It's to have these young people at a time when the single biggest demand we're going to have is workers. That's the great, no state can have a better opportunity than that. We really, how we do it in the future states will depend on how we do in that area. Again, I thought you folks could want to do that. I normally would close with a joke, and I know you guys like jokes, but since I've talked so long, I think I'll take a few questions and go ahead at that way. Okay. Oh, okay, you can apply it. Go ahead. And if elected, no. Yes, sir.
Recently, the news is that there was a microphone needed. No. Is that better? No. So I just go ahead. Okay.
I can hear you. I'll repeat it back to them.
Recently, there was an election in New York where the Amazon plant there workers voted to unionize.
Right.
Which may be good, maybe not good. Texas isn't a real unionized type state. What are your feelings about how that might affect things as that continues to work forward?
The question was, and most of you probably heard, the unionization of the Amazon workers and how that's going to affect the economy, that sort of thing. Well, I think what you're going to see happening is, and frankly, I don't think whether or not people vote to join a union is going to be the determining factor here. But what we are seeing right now is the balance of power in negotiating. You want to play game theory or negotiation theory or whatever. The balance of power in negotiations between management and labor is going to move more in the direction of labor in the coming years because we're short. There's no two ways. We don't have enough workers. And so the workers we do have are going to have more bargaining power. Now, whether, again, I think a company like Amazon is probably more conducive to that than some of their other retail chains because everything they do is not consumer-facing directly with people and that sort of thing. So I think they it's higher percentage of impetus to do that sort of thing there. I think it's unlikely it's going to spread in a major way to Texas. As you said, Texas is not particularly a union state. But there's no question, whether you're in a union or not, if you have a skill set that people need right now, with this worker shortage you have some bargaining power. And so I do think what you're going to see is wage rates are going to, as a percentage of the total, how you carve up the pie, wages will move to a bigger piece of that pie going forward because we clearly are in a situation where there's a shortage of workers, and we'll replace some of those workers with technology. I mean, we're already talking about driverless trucks and all that kind of stuff. We'll do some of that, and then the warehouses be more automated. But what people forget about that is technology changes jobs, but it creates more jobs. The more technology we have, the more jobs we have. I mean, look at the world today. More people working than ever, and more technology than ever. When the wheel was invented 3,500 years ago, it displaced 75% of the workforce at that time. I guess all you did was put rocks in the back and haul them or something. I don't know. But it displaced 75% of the workforce. But think how many jobs the wheels created over history. I mean, so the bottom line is, yes, what I want to see technology, it changes the types of jobs. And that really puts pressure on retraining older workers. I think that's a place our country really failed. But the bottom line is, with all that going on in regards with this shortage, there's going to be a balance of power shift to labor, and so labor's going to be a bigger piece of the pie with or without the unions. Yes, sir.
Great presentation, by the way. So I hear you saying that there's a great opportunity we have in the state of Texas with all the workforce that is about to come in. How are businesses in North Texas, how can they take advantage of this opportunity? What should they be doing?
Question was, what can business do to take advantage of this opportunity? The first thing we can do is make sure the opportunity is here by encouraging your legislators and everyone to support education in the state of Texas. We need and the chicken in every pot. But I mean, the critical thing is that all hinges on that. I mean, there's a great environment here. Our cost structure is good. Our regulatory structure is reasonable. Our tax structure could be better, but it's not bad compared to the rest of the country. We don't lose a lot of stuff because of our tax structure. We don't win a lot of stuff because of our tax structure. We have the best incentive programs in the country. We have a whole lot of these going for us to grow here, and we've seen the results of that. I mean, they just gave out that governor's cup they give out every year. We just won it for the 10th year in a row. And that's for the most new corporate locations in the state. Not only did we win it, Ohio was second, we lapped them. We had like 1,100, they had like 500. I mean, we doubled everybody else. We have really, we're an economic juggernaut here. That's good. That creates a lot of opportunities, but we are going to have a workforce to accommodate that. We are.
How about real estate? Is this a great time, or what kind of time is this for real estate?
what kind of time is this real estate? It somewhat depends on the type of real estate. We're in a very odd situation. A lot of people are going to have a housing collapse and all that, like we did in 2008. I don't think so, because we're not out building like crazy right now, and giving mortgages don't make sense and that sort of thing. So I don't think we're going to have that. I do think we may be in for what I would call a garden variety real estate correction here in the next few years, because the prices have really escalated. Most of that's because we can't get it built fast enough. I mean, that's a different problem than when you have too much of it and it keeps escalating. That's what we had in the 80s, that's what we had in 2008. This is a case of inventory has to catch up. And so what I think, you're not going to see prices continue to grow at the rate they have in housing, but you are going to continue to see, I think, some increases and some shrinking, but we still haven't caught up with the inventory yet. And so, yes, there'll be a correction at some point. But real estate's like engineers. Anything that takes a little while to produce always has its cycles. I said, the economy as a whole doesn't, but they do. Like engineers is that way. There'll be a demand for engineers. So everybody tells their smart kids, go be an engineer. And so they all go major in engineering. And then a few years later, it's glut. All the people tell their smart kids, whatever you don't make an engineer. And so then a few years later, it's shortage. And we go through that cycle. Real estate's a lot the same way. You can't produce it overnight. Commercial real estate's going to be interesting. I think some of the big office buildings may well see part of their space converted to retail or urban living spaces and that sort of thing. I think there's going to be some reshaping of things. But by the same token, I don't think it's going to be like empty buildings forever. So people are going back to work. We had, at the peak of this thing, we had 35% of people working from home. It's down to 12. It was 6 before the pandemic. So again, on any given day, fewer people are going to be in the office. But they may just want one more square feet, so they can have more elbow room spread out a little bit if they need to. But so there will be some adjustment, but markets adjust to these things. And I'll give you a quick example of this, and I'll move on to another question if you have time. But back in Austin, back in the really bad bust of the 80s and all that, the big real estate glut and all that, there was a headline in Austin in 1990, this is in the States, that said Austin has a 25-year supply of office space. We don't need to build anything else for the next 25 years. That was in 1990. I don't know if any of you in Austin between 1990 and 2015, but they did build a building or two. But I don't want to talk about that. What I want to talk about is 1993, 3 years later. The National Association of Industrial Office Park did a survey around the country, where we're all in the real estate and all that. What do you think the hottest real estate market in the country was 3 years after they said they had a 25-year glut? Austin, Texas was the hottest real estate market in the country. Which says we figured this stuff out. Again, markets work. We repurpose some of it, we change some of it up, we do things with it, but we figured this stuff out. And so I think there'll be certainly some adjustments. I don't see a big collapse or anything like that coming. I got a couple over here. Yes, sir.
Yes, your thoughts on cryptocurrencies and their potential impact on the economy?
Okay, my thoughts on cryptocurrencies and their potential impact on the economy. They're with us. They're part of the landscape now. They're going to be here. And basically, a lot depends on it. It's, kind of what makes cryptocurrency work, maybe you don't know, is you have to fix the supply. If you don't fix the supply, they have to mine for it, but there's only so much they can mine for. I mean, if they don't fix the supply, the whole thing kind of falls apart. But I mean, even the U.S. is probably going to have a digital currency fairly soon. The banks are looking at it, the SEC is looking at it. It's part of our culture. It's going to be with us. I don't think it replaces traditional currencies. And the reason is, for something to be money, okay, it has to do three things. It has to be a medium exchange. You buy and sell stuff with it. You can do that with cryptocurrency. It has to be a standard of value. You have to be express prices in it. We're not doing that now, but we can figure that out. We can express prices of cryptocurrencies. But it also has to be, the third one, it has to be a store of value, of something you want to hold. How many of you would be willing today to buy a 30-year bond where the payment was based on the future of cryptocurrency? I might make up point. Okay. So it's going to be a very important part of what we do. It's not going to replace the global monetary system, but it's going to be a bigger part of it. It's not going to replace it. I got 3 hands and 1 question. Okay. I got 3 hands and 3 questions. You just said, go ahead. I'll do them fast.
How quickly will the free market solve this gas increase, and are there really barriers to prevent the oil and gas companies from drilling to solve the problem?
Good question. How fast will the market solve this gas crisis, and are there barriers? I think we're going to see probably high prices for a few more months. A lot depends on how the Ukrainian situation plays out, because that's going to affect Russia's place in the market and that sort of thing. Are there barriers? Yes, there are barriers. Like everybody else, they have supply chain workforce issues. That's one thing. They pay so much, they get around that usually pretty well at some point. But the barrier is right now, before the pandemic happened, it was like, they drill production of 20-30%, they plow it all back in the drilling. They plow it all back in the drilling. So investors weren't making any money. And investors now want to make money. And so, number one, they're going to drill at a slower pace, which is fine, because it doesn't need to increase 20-30% a year to get where it needs to be. But you got to get the investment community convinced that they will, in fact, give them the money. If they will pay out more of the profits to investors and give them a decent rate of return. They're having a real problem with capital market now, particularly the mid-sized companies. Big guys can get capital, but the smaller guys are having a problem with that. They're the ones that usually lead the drilling activity. New drilling programs are multi-billion-dollar investments, and they're not simple. That's a barrier. And then the other barrier is the political climate, quite frankly. I mean, people think about yourself, you have $1 billion and you want to do something with it, and you think, oh, maybe I can invest in oil and gas. And you see something come out that says, we're going to get rid of this in 15 years. You might rethink that investment. And so, and again, I think that they have it wrong. And again, they have it wrong. Both sides have it wrong, but that's particularly wrong. And I think that also is an impediment because people want to put their capital into something that's going to appreciate over time. And as long as that concern is out there about the policy environment, I think that's an impediment as well. I was going to use yes or no, that certainly didn't work. Okay, I'm going to go with yes, sir.
Dr. Perryman, you mentioned earlier that, we know some of us that lived through the double-digit inflation back there remember that. No, it's not as bad yet. But are you really that sanguine about where we're going on inflation? Because Notre Dame economists, Richard Fisher, Mohammed El area, and they've been saying the Fed is behind the curve for 8 or 9 months now. Do you think they're that far behind the curve?
It's a cadet behind the curve on inflation. The thing I'm going to say is, obviously they're having to dance on the head of a pin here with that going on at the same time, the Ukraine thing that's going on. Would I have liked to see them raise interest rates the first time 3 months earlier? Yes. Can they catch up with 5 or 6 rate increases this year if they need to? Yes. Okay, so it's kind of one of those things that and I've been prefaces, I'm an advisor to them, but that doesn't mean I don't say what I think. I wish they would have done it, 3 months earlier, but I think, yes, I think they can control it. And you have to remember, controlling inflation is in their wheelhouse. All this stuff they've been doing the last few years is not. It's responding to pandemics, responding to the mortgage crisis, all that. That's not the Fed's historic role. You've got a lot of smart people who've been there years and years and years. They're back doing now what they cut their teeth on. And so I think, I think some people underestimate their ability there. Yes, yes, I wish they'd done it sooner, but I think they're in a pretty good zone right now. Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to compliment you. That's the shortest question he's ever asked. If you go back, what I'd like to know is your impact, or your thoughts on the impact on our overall economy, particularly through the next, say, 24, 36 months. When you look at the Obama administration and the progressive move they made, was pretty much a smoother transition from the previous Bush administration. You look at Trump came in and flip-flopped everything back pretty dramatically. Then in comes this current administration, and it's a flop on steroids. That is not what Americans have been used to for historically. We have movements, but they're more smooth, so to speak. They're more moderated. These have been pretty dramatic. And so with everything, you mentioned, you made a very good case on the COVID shutdown and its impact. We're still digging out of that with all these major flip-flops. And I'd like to know what your thoughts are going between now and, say, 3 years out.
Wow, that went 30 seconds or less. The question was, with all the pretty dramatic policy shifts we've had as we moved from Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden, all those dramatic flips and that sort of thing in policy and philosophy, which is a little, pretty big flops. Is that creating any difficulties for us? And I guess the short answer is certainly we'd like to have a little more stability, a little more predictability. Anytime you have uncertainty about the future, all of you in business know that, you have uncertainty, you're not going to take quite as much risk as you would otherwise. So you're not going to have quite as much growth as you would otherwise. This applies to the changes in terms of both parties. If you look back historically, though, this shift compared to shifting, say, Eisenhower to Kennedy or something, there have been other periods of time where we've had pretty big shifts in the policy prescriptions that we use in the way we went about doing things, and we've managed to adapt to them fairly well. This is a very, very adaptable economy. And that's it's one of our real strengths. We always have been very adaptable. We figure things out and move forward. But yes, indeed, there's no question that the more uncertainty you create, the more you're going to sort of hold back economic growth. There's enough uncertainty out there without us trying to create some. And and there's been a lot of things going on. The Obama administration, as they came in, we were in the middle of the mortgage crisis. They did some very significant things. Chose to pass health care reform the first year. The other thing that I wish we could do, and I'll close on this because this is going to close on. The two parties have got to start talking to each other. Everything you look at today, it didn't used to be that way. Everything you look at, whichever side has one or two more votes, they pass everything because their side all votes for it, their side all votes against it. That's not how we've done things historically. If you look at the two periods of the greatest eras of revolution in legislation we've ever had, one Republican, one Democrat, were probably Lyndon Johnson and Ronald Reagan. Lyndon Johnson got his done by working with Edward Dirksen, a very conservative leader of Republicans in the Senate. Okay? Ronald Reagan got his done by working with Tip O'Neill, a very liberal Speaker of the House. Now, the one thing they had in common, both of them did it the same way. They played cards and drank scotch. I'm not sure what that says. but we really do need to get to a point where we're focused on finding the real solutions. And I can tell you, having done this for a long time and studied centuries of it, very rarely does either extreme have it right. We usually get our best solutions when some smart people with some good thoughts and good philosophy come together and duke it out and come to something in the middle. George Will, as once said, something I think is very, very telling. He said, democracy is the politics of the half-loaf. And I think democracy and economics and economic policy should be the economics of the half-loaf. Nobody comes away with everything they want, everybody gets some of what they want, and we can come along pretty well with that. I'd like to see that happen. I'm still not running for anything, but y'all have been a great audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Perryman. I learned two things. One, Dr. Perryman's a really smart man, and two, John gave him my script instead of what I had in here. I anticipated this being a lot more funny. We got a couple of things that we want to close with, and we're going to hurry because I know we're short on time, but I wanted to bring up Carolyn. She's got an announcement to make that happened during lunch.
It's always great when we gather and we start talking about students and kids and what can we do to help them. And it's fun to walk back to your table and someone motions you over and say, and I walk over and I have an offer from Ish at Coca-Cola that he will give Dell computers to every one of our scholarship recipients this year.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And with that, hopefully that sign of generosity will get things going. We've got a couple of things we want to auction off. I'm not an auctioneer, but we're going to do our best to raise a little bit of money for the Education Foundation so that we can add to the Hand Foundation's gift and the other gifts that we receive throughout the year. So the first thing is we've got an autographed signed football from Drew Pearson, Hall-of-Famer now. We gave 2 out last year, and he was a pending Hall-of-Famer, so this one's obviously more valuable. Last year I served as the treasurer for the foundation, so I know each football went for $2,500 last year. So I fully anticipate this going for more. So with that, I guess I'll start the bidding. Anybody? $500. It's for the kids.
1,000.
1,000. I mean, would it help if Dr. Perryman autographed it too? I'll try anything. So
1,000 back now.
Okay, we're going the wrong direction. Anybody? We've got $1,000 for football. That's equivalent to a half of the scholarship that we give away every year. So that
I'll
is
bet Nick's 1,000, but he can keep the football.
very good. So $2,000. Anybody care to offer more? Otherwise, I'll close the bidding and accept $2,000 for the football. Thanks, Mayor Wheat and Nick. Lastly, we have a book from Dr. Perryman, and I'm told that we can get him to autograph this as well. And we also are going to give away a subscription to his monthly newsletter, correct? And so, can I get a number on this book, autographed book from Dr. Perryman, and a monthly subscription?
100.
500. $500. $500. 700. Anybody? $700 for a book, autograph, first edition. This is going to be worth a lot. Yes. I've got 5 books I can ultimately give away. So 700. Do I have 3 more at 700? We'll give all of these books away and send a few kids a scholarship here in the next couple of months. Anybody? 700. 2 more? Rodonna back in the back. 1 more. We're 1 mile away from home. Who's going to take us home? Anybody? I guess I could just start calling out names. There's so many banks in here. Yeah. Plus, I had to follow Dr. Perryman. Not to help me out here. I'm trying to raise some money for some kids. So, anyway, we'll do 4 at 700. I'll do the last one for 700. 5 books. That's 2 scholarships that we just raised. And so, thank you very much. Very good. Last but not least, I think I've thanked about everybody in the room, but if I haven't thanked you, thank you for coming today. We appreciate it. I think Dr. Perryman was fantastic. He's always a great speaker, very entertaining. His information and his delivery is very impactful, and I think we all left here with something we can use today. We do have the flower arrangements on your table. John has asked whoever's birthday is closest to April 1st gets the bouquet. So please take those with you. And I do want to say thank you to Pam Hudson, who prepared the centerpieces. So I see I've lost the room already. Okay, but it's not going to take me much to get off the stage. Yes, if you want an auction item, please meet us up here. We're going to take the money before you leave. Thank you all. Y'all have a great Friday.